Welcome to Midnight Mysteries. Tonight, we descend into the glittering world of London's elite, where diamonds sparkle and secrets cut deeper than any jewel. Beneath crystal chandeliers and champagne toasts, ambition festers, old wounds bleed fresh, and murder wears the finest evening dress. Join us for Diamonds and Deceit, a tale of jealousy, betrayal, and the terrible price of beauty, crafted in homage to the masterful Agatha Christie, whose genius we honor, though this enigma unfolds on our own terms. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you joining us from tonight? Your presence illuminates our journey through these shadowed mysteries. Now, let the story unfold. Chapter 1. The Vanderton Affair. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, its cream envelope bearing the Vanderton crest, a falcon clutching a diamond in its talons. I watched Hercule Poirot examine it with the care one might afford a rare butterfly, his fingertips tracing the embossed seal before slicing it open with a silver letter knife. "Hastings, mon ami," he murmured, scanning the elegant script within. "It would appear that the little grey cells are required to prevent a crime, rather than solve one already committed." I set down my newspaper, some tedious business about mining rights in South Africa, and leaned forward. Prevent a crime? That's rather unusual, isn't it? Unusual, yes, but not unwelcome. Poirot's moustache twitched with interest. "Lady Evangeline Vanderton requests my presence at her residence this afternoon. She fears for the safety of certain assets." Lady Vanderton. I knew the name, of course. Everyone in London did. The widow of Sir Arthur Vanderton, shipping magnate, she had inherited not only his considerable fortune, but also his legendary collection of jewels, chief among them the Donarelli Diamonds, a matched set of stones said to have once adorned a Medici princess. "The very same." Poirot rose, adjusting his already immaculate jacket. "She hosts a gala this Saturday evening to display the Donarelli diamonds publicly for the first time in 20 years. And she believes someone intends to steal them." "Well then," I reached for my hat. "Shall we?" Vanderton House occupied a commanding position on a quiet square in Mayfair, its white Portland stone facade gleaming in the thin April sunlight. The butler, a sepulchral figure named Blackwood, admitted us with the minimum of words and the maximum of dignity, leading us through a marble entrance hall adorned with paintings of ships cutting through stormy seas. Sir Arthur's legacy, I thought. Fortunes built on trade and timber, and the restless energy of empire. Lady Vanderton received us in the morning room, a space of soft green silk and delicate furniture that seemed designed to make visitors feel slightly oversized. She was perhaps 50, handsome rather than beautiful, with sharp dark eyes and silver-streaked hair swept up in the Edwardian fashion. Diamonds glinted at her throat. Not the Donarelli set, I noted, but impressive nonetheless. "Monsieur Poirot." She extended her hand, and he bowed over it with continental grace. "Thank you for coming. I am not a woman given to fanciful fears, but this matter troubles me greatly." "Then you must tell me everything, madame," Poirot said, settling into the chair she indicated. "Omit nothing, however insignificant it may seem." Lady Vanderton's fingers tightened around the arm of her chair. "The Donarelli diamonds have been in my husband's family for 3 generations. They are priceless, not merely in monetary terms, but in history, in sentiment. Arthur always intended they should be displayed for charity. He believed beautiful things should be shared, not locked away." "A noble sentiment," Poirot agreed. After his death 2 years ago, I resolved to honor that wish. This Saturday, I am hosting a gala to raise funds for the Veterans Relief Foundation. The diamonds will be displayed, and afterward, I intend to donate them to the British Museum. She paused, but in the past fortnight, I have received 3 anonymous letters warning me not to proceed. She opened a drawer in the small writing desk beside her and withdrew 3 envelopes, which she handed to Poirot. I moved to stand behind him, reading over his shoulder. The letters were brief and brutal. Cut from newspaper print, common enough among those who wished to disguise their hand, they spelled out threats with crude efficiency. The diamonds will never reach the museum. Cancel the gala or suffer the consequences. You cannot protect what is not yours. The Donarelli Diamonds belong to another. Saturday will be your last celebration. Heed this warning. Charming, I muttered. Poirot examined each letter with meticulous attention, holding them to the light, sniffing the paper, studying the cut edges of the newsprint. These were delivered how, madame? Left on the doorstep. Blackwood found them each morning. No one saw who placed them there. And you have informed the police? Lady Vanderton's expression cooled. Inspector Graves came to examine the premises. He suggested I hire additional security for the evening, which I have done, and assured me that anonymous letters are often the work of pranksters. He was dismissive, I could imagine. Scotland Yard had little patience for the anxieties of wealthy widows, however justified those anxieties might be. Tell me, madame, Poirot said, setting the letters aside. Who knows of your plans to display and donate the diamonds? It was announced in the society pages 3 weeks ago. Anyone might know. But who knew before the announcement? Who was privy to your intentions? Lady Vanderton considered. My solicitor, Mr. Hartley. My personal secretary, Miss Crane, who has been invaluable in organising the gala. Sir Reginald Fossey, the insurance assessor. He examined and valued the diamonds last month. And, she hesitated, yes, madame? Mr. Marcus Ashworth. He was my late husband's preferred jeweller. His family firm has maintained the Donarelli set for decades. He advised me on the display arrangements. I noticed the slight colour that rose in her cheeks when she spoke Ashworth's name. Poirot, I suspected, noticed it too. Anyone else? My nephew, Lord Philip Ashworth. No relation to Marcus, despite the shared surname. Philip is my sister's son. He was displeased when I announced the donation. He felt the diamonds should remain in the family. Displeased? Poirot raised an eyebrow. We argued. Lady Vanderton's jaw tightened. Philip has certain financial difficulties. He believed I might sell the diamonds and share the proceeds with him as his inheritance. The donation to the museum rather thwarted those hopes. I see. Poirot rose and moved to the window, gazing out at the square below. And this gala on Saturday, who will attend? 200 guests, the cream of London society. The diamonds will be displayed in a specially constructed glass case in the ballroom, guarded by hired men from the Thornton Security Agency. After the gala, they will be transported to the museum under police escort. A formidable arrangement. I thought so. And yet, Lady Vanderton spread her hands. These letters have shaken me. Monsieur Poirot, I am not a nervous woman, but I find I cannot dismiss them, as Inspector Graves suggests. There is something about them, some quality of genuine menace, that disturbs me deeply. Poirot turned from the window. Your instincts, madame, they are sound. These letters, they are not the work of a prankster. The newspaper cuttings, They come from 3 different publications, carefully selected. The paper itself is of good quality, not common stock. And here, he lifted the 3rd letter. A trace of perfume, faint but distinctive. This is no random mischief. This is deliberate, personal. Lady Vanderton's face paled. Then you believe the threat is real? I believe, madame, that someone wishes you to cancel this gala, or wishes you to be frightened enough to make a mistake. The question we must answer is, who benefits? A soft knock interrupted us. The door opened to admit a young woman, perhaps 30, with mouse-brown hair, pulled back severely, and spectacles that did little to disguise rather fine grey eyes. She carried a leather portfolio under her arm. "Forgive me, Lady Vanderton. I didn't realize you had guests." Her voice was quiet, carefully modulated, the voice of one accustomed to remaining in the background. "Miss Crane, come in." Lady Vanderton gestured. "This is Monsieur Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings. Monsieur Poirot is consulting on our security arrangements for Saturday." Something flickered in Miss Crane's eyes, surprise, concern, but it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. "How wise," she said smoothly. "Yes. I've brought the final guest list and the seating arrangements for your approval." "Excellent. Leave them on the desk, please." Lady Vanderton turned back to Poirot. "Miss Crane has been with me for 3 years now. I could not manage without her." "You are too kind, Lady Vanderton." Miss Crane set down the portfolio, her movements precise and economical. "Will there be anything else?" "That will be all." Miss Crane departed as quietly as she had come, closing the door with barely a sound. Poirot watched her go, his expression thoughtful. A most efficient young woman. "Indispensable," Lady Vanderton agreed. "Now, Monsieur Poirot, will you help me? Will you attend the gala and ensure nothing goes wrong?" Poirot inclined his head. "I will do more than that, madame. With your permission, I should like to examine the diamonds themselves, interview those who knew of your plans, and observe the security arrangements. If someone means to strike on Saturday, we must be prepared. You have my full cooperation." "Bien." Poirot retrieved his hat and gloves. "We shall return tomorrow to begin. In the meantime, I advise you to tell no one of my involvement. Let us see who reveals themselves when they believe they are unobserved." Outside, the afternoon had turned grey, clouds gathering over Mayfair like disapproving matrons. "What do you make of it, Poirot?" I asked as we walked toward the main road to find a cab. "Several things, mon ami." Poirot twirled his cane thoughtfully. "First, the letters are interesting, but they are not what they seem. They warn of theft, but the language, suffer the consequences, your last celebration, suggests something more personal than simple robbery. You think someone means to harm Lady Vanderton? I think someone means to harm something, Hastings. The question is what and why?" He paused at the corner, watching a motor car rumble past. "Second, Lady Vanderton is not telling us everything. When she spoke of Monsieur Ashworth, the jeweller, her manner changed. There is history there, history she wishes to conceal. I thought of the colour in her cheeks, the slight hesitation. An affair? Perhaps. We shall see." Poirot raised his hand to hail an approaching taxi. "Third, and most interesting, the secretary, Miss Crane. Did you observe her hands when Lady Vanderton mentioned my name?" "Her hands? They trembled, Hastings. Only for a moment, but they trembled. Miss Helena Crane knows something. The question is whether she knows it is important." The taxi drew up and we climbed inside. "What now?" I asked. Poirot settled back against the seat, his eyes glinting with the peculiar light they took on when a puzzle engaged his interest. "Now, my friend, we learn everything there is to know about diamonds, and about the people who covet them. For where there is great beauty, there is also great greed, and where there is greed," he smiled, though without warmth, "there is often murder." Chapter 2. Glittering Facades. The days between our initial meeting with Lady Vanderton and the Saturday gala passed in a whirlwind of investigation. Poirot, true to his word, conducted interviews with all those privy to the diamond display plans, and I accompanied him faithfully, notebook in hand, though I confess my observations often fell short of his exacting standards. Mr. Hartley, the solicitor, proved to be a dried-up specimen of a man whose reverence for legal procedure bordered on the religious. He had handled the Vanderton estate for 30 years, and seemed genuinely horrified at the suggestion that anyone might wish Lady Vanderton harm. "The diamonds are fully insured, of course," he informed us in his dusty Lincoln's Inn office. Sir Reginald Foss conducted the valuation himself. £250,000, gentlemen, £250,000. Poirot's eyebrows rose appreciably. "A considerable sum. The Donarelli diamonds are without peer. The central stone alone, the Donarelli heart, is 43 carats, flawless, with a provenance stretching back to 15th century Florence." Hartley shook his head. "Lady Vanderton's decision to donate them is extraordinarily generous. And Lord Philip Ashworth? He objected to this generosity, I understand." Hartley's expression soured. "Lord Philip has objected to a great many things since his aunt refused to pay his debts. The young man has a weakness for cards, and an even greater weakness for believing the next hand will reverse his fortunes. How considerable are these debts?" "Considerable enough that certain unpleasant gentlemen have begun making inquiries." Hartley sniffed. "I advised Lady Vanderton against providing further assistance. One must draw a line." Sir Reginald Fossey, the insurance assessor, received us in rather different circumstances. A sleek modern office near Lloyd's, all polished wood and brass fittings. He was a compact man with quick eyes, and the restless energy of one accustomed to evaluating the world in terms of risk and reward. "Magnificent stones," he declared when Poirot inquired about the Donarelli diamonds. "Absolutely magnificent. I've assessed crown jewels that didn't sparkle half so brightly." He leaned forward confidentially. "Between ourselves, gentlemen, I was relieved when Lady Vanderton announced the museum donation. Stones like that, they attract trouble. Better behind museum glass than adorning a neck at parties." "You examined them recently?" "Last month. Standard procedure before a public display. Verify authenticity, confirm valuation, update the insurance accordingly." He smiled. "All in perfect order, I assure you." Poirot tilted his head. "And in your professional opinion, Sir Reginald, could the diamonds be stolen from Saturday's gala?" Fossey's smile faded. "From Vanderton House? With Thornton security on duty and a police escort arranged for transport?" He shook his head firmly. "I'd stake my reputation on it, Monsieur Poirot. Those diamonds will be safer than the crown jewels themselves." Marcus Ashworth proved more elusive. Poirot left his card at Ashworth & Sons, fine jewellers, 3 times before securing an appointment, and when we finally entered the elegant Bond Street establishment, I understood why the man might wish to avoid questions. He was, quite simply, the most charming person I had ever distrusted on sight. Tall, dark-haired, and impeccably dressed, Marcus Ashworth possessed the sort of easy confidence that suggested life had rarely denied him anything he wanted. His smile was warm, his handshake firm, and his eyes were brown, long-lashed, almost feminine in their beauty. held a knowing glint that made me think of cats watching mice. "Monsieur Poirot, an honour." He gestured us into a private consultation room, its walls lined with velvet cases. "Lady Vanderton mentioned you were advising on security matters. A wise precaution. One can never be too careful with the Donarelli set." "You know the diamonds well, monsieur?" "Intimately." Ashworth settled into a leather chair, crossing his legs with casual elegance. "My father maintained them for Sir Arthur, cleaned them, verified the settings, ensured they remained pristine. I inherited the privilege when father passed. Beautiful stones, Monsieur Poirot. There's something almost alive about truly fine diamonds. They seem to hold light differently, as though they're breathing." "Poetic," Poirot observed. "I am a romantic, I confess." Ashworth's smile widened. "It is perhaps a failing in my profession. One should assess gems coldly, mathematically, but the Donarelli diamonds," he shook his head, "they inspire passion. And Lady Vanderton, does she also inspire such passion?" The question hung in the air. I saw Ashworth's smile flicker, just for an instant, before his composure reasserted itself. "Lady Vanderton is a remarkable woman," he said smoothly. "Her husband was a dear friend to my family. I am honoured to continue serving her." Poirot nodded, as though this answered everything. But his eyes, those sharp miss-nothing eyes, remained fixed on Ashworth's face. "One more question, monsieur. When did you last handle the Donarelli diamonds?" 3 weeks ago. I verified the settings before the display case was constructed." Ashworth spread his hands. "All was perfect. The diamonds are ready for their final public appearance." On Saturday evening, Poirot and I arrived at Vanderton House as the first guests were ascending the marble steps. Footmen in the Vanderton livery, deep blue with silver trim, lined the entrance hall, and the sound of a string quartet drifted from the ballroom beyond. "Remember, Hastings," Poirot murmured as we surrendered our coats, "we're observers tonight. Watch the guests. Note who speaks to whom, who avoids whom, who cannot keep their eyes from the diamonds. And if someone attempts to steal them, then we act. But I suspect, mon ami, that tonight's drama will be more subtle than a simple theft." The ballroom took my breath away. Crystal chandeliers blazed overhead, their light cascading down upon 200 of London's finest. Gentlemen in evening dress, ladies glittering with jewels of their own, all revolving in a slow dance of wealth and privilege. At the far end of the room, raised upon a velvet-draped dais, stood the display case. And within it, the Donarelli diamonds blazed like captured starlight. I had seen fine jewels before, but nothing had prepared me for the Donarelli set. The necklace alone featured 37 diamonds graduated in size, leading to the legendary Donarelli heart at its centre, a stone so brilliant it seemed to pulse with inner fire. Matching earrings flanked it, along with a bracelet and tiara that completed the set. Together they represented not merely wealth, but a kind of transcendent beauty that silenced even the most jaded observers. "Magnificent," I breathed. "Oui." Poirot's voice was oddly flat. "Most magnificent indeed." Lady Vanderton approached us, resplendent in midnight blue silk that matched her servant's livery. Diamonds sparkled at her throat. Different ones, I noted, smaller and more modest than the displayed set. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, I'm so glad you could attend." Her smile was gracious, but strain showed around her eyes. "No further letters have arrived. Perhaps the threats were empty after all." "Perhaps," Poirot agreed. "But Hercule Poirot, he does not relax his vigilance until the curtain falls." Lady Vanderton nodded and moved away to greet other guests. I watched her cross the room, and noticed that Marcus Ashworth intercepted her almost immediately, bending close to whisper something that made her laugh and touch his arm. "Poirot," I said quietly. "Ashworth and Lady Vanderton. I see them, Hastings. I see everything." Indeed, from our position near the refreshment table, we had an excellent view of the entire room. I observed Lord Philip Ashworth, a weak-chinned young man with the florid complexion of one who drank too much and slept too little, hovering near the display case with ill-concealed avarice. Nearby, Miss Helena Crane circulated with quiet efficiency, ensuring glasses were filled and conversations flowed smoothly. Sir Reginald Fosse stood before the diamonds, explaining their provenance to a cluster of admirers. His voice carried across the room. The central stone was cut in Amsterdam in 1487, commissioned by Lorenzo de' Medici himself. And threading through it all, a tall, severe man in evening dress moved with watchful purpose. One of Thornton's security agents, I surmised, doing his best to appear inconspicuous. "Poirot," I nudged my friend. "Look at Miss Crane." The secretary had paused near a pillar, her gaze fixed on Marcus Ashworth and Lady Vanderton. Her expression, usually so carefully composed, had shifted into something raw, something almost like hatred. "Most interesting," Poirot murmured. "The mouse shows her claws." At that moment, Miss Crane seemed to sense our attention. Her eyes met Poirot's across the crowded room, and she flinched, actually flinched, before turning away and disappearing through a service door. Should we follow her? Not yet. Poirot sipped his champagne with apparent unconcern. Let her believe she escaped unnoticed. The little grey cells, they file away such moments for later consideration. The evening progressed. Speeches were made, toasts proposed, and considerable sums pledged to the Veterans Relief Foundation. Lady Vanderton stood before the display case and spoke movingly of her late husband's vision, his belief that beauty should serve humanity, that wealth carried obligations. I found myself unexpectedly moved. Whatever secrets Lady Vanderton might harbour, her commitment to this cause seemed genuine. At 10 o'clock, the dancing resumed. Poirot and I had just secured fresh drinks when a commotion near the conservatory doors drew our attention. Lord Philip Ashworth was arguing with Marcus Ashworth, no relation, I reminded myself, despite the shared name. Their voices, though lowered, carried an unmistakable edge. "Have no right," Philip was saying, his face flushed with anger and drink. "Those diamonds should have been mine. Should have stayed in the family." "The diamonds belong to Lady Vanderton," Marcus replied coolly, "and she has chosen to donate them. Your quarrel is with her, not me. My quarrel is with anyone who profited from my uncle's death." Philip stepped closer, swaying slightly. "Don't think I don't know what you are, Ashworth. What you've been doing. When this is over, you'll still be penniless and desperate." Marcus's voice dropped to something near a whisper. "Some things never change, do they, Philip?" For a moment, I thought Philip might strike him. His hand actually clenched into a fist at his side. But then Lady Vanderton appeared, her smile fixed and her eyes furious. "Gentlemen, you are causing a scene." Her voice could have frozen champagne. "Philip, perhaps you should take some air. Marcus, I require your assistance with Sir Reginald." Philip shot Marcus a look of pure venom, then stalked toward the conservatory. Marcus, smooth as ever, offered Lady Vanderton his arm and escorted her back toward the display case. "Well," I said, "that was illuminating." "Indeed." Poirot's eyes followed the departing figures. "Lord Philip is angry, desperate, and believes Marcus Ashworth has wronged him somehow. Monsieur Ashworth, meanwhile, holds some power over the young lord, something that allows him to speak with such contempt. Blackmail, perhaps, or perhaps simply the cruel confidence of one who has succeeded where another has failed. Poirot set down his glass. "Come, Hastings, I wish to examine the conservatory. Lord Philip chose that direction for a reason, and I would know what awaits there." We made our way through the crowd, nodding to guests, pausing for brief pleasantries. The conservatory doors stood open, admitting the cool evening air and the scent of hothouse flowers. Inside, palms and ferns created a jungle of shadows. Moonlight filtered through the glass ceiling, casting strange patterns on the tiled floor. At first, I saw no sign of Lord Philip. Then Poirot gripped my arm, his fingers suddenly iron. "Hastings," he said quietly, "do not cry out." I followed his gaze to the far corner of the conservatory, where a leather shoe protruded from behind a massive potted fern. A shoe attached to a leg that was not moving. We approached slowly, carefully, and there, sprawled on the cold tiles, his evening dress stained with something dark and spreading, lay Marcus Ashworth. His eyes stared at nothing. His lips were parted, as though in surprise. And around his throat, livid and terrible, bruises were already forming. But that was not what had killed him. On the floor beside his outstretched hand, a champagne flute lay shattered. And from his lips, the faint scent of almonds drifted upward. "Poison," Poirot breathed. "Mon Dieu! Poison and violence together. This is not what I expected." I stared at the body of the charming jeweller, my mind racing. The diamonds! Could this be connected? Connected! Poirot turned to me, and his eyes were hard as the diamonds we had come to protect. "Hastings, everything is connected. The question is how?" He straightened, his jaw set with grim determination. "Summon the police! Summon Lady Vanderton! The gala has just become something far more sinister than a simple display of wealth." He looked down at Marcus Ashworth's body, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The glittering facade, it has cracked. Now we shall see what darkness lies beneath." Chapter 3. Shattered glass. The next hour dissolved into chaos. I summoned Blackwood, who summoned Lady Vanderton, who, to her credit, neither screamed nor fainted, but rather turned the colour of old parchment and gripped the doorframe as though it alone kept her upright. "Marcus!" she whispered. "Oh God, Marcus!" Poirot positioned himself between her and the body. "Madame, you must not approach. This is now a matter for the police." "But I don't understand. Why would anyone?" Her composure cracked, and for a moment I glimpsed the raw grief beneath. Then, with visible effort, she reassembled herself. "The guests, the gala cannot continue. The gala must continue, madam." Poirot's voice was gentle but firm. "At least for the moment. No one must leave until the police arrive. The murderer may well be among your guests." Lady Vanderton stared at him. "You think someone here? Someone I invited into my home? I think nothing yet. But Hercule Poirot, he does not permit suspects to scatter before he has examined them." He turned to Blackwood, who hovered in the doorway with the rigid self-control of a well-trained servant confronting the unthinkable. "Seal this room. No one enters. And send word to Scotland Yard. Ask for Inspector Graves, if he is available. He knows the situation." Blackwood inclined his head and departed. Lady Vanderton remained frozen, her eyes fixed on the shadowed corner where Marcus Ashworth's body lay. "Madam," Poirot touched her arm. You must return to your guests. Smile. Reassure them. Tell them there has been a small incident, nothing serious, but the conservatory is temporarily closed. Can you do this? She drew a shuddering breath. Yes, I can do this. She left, walking as though the floor might give way beneath her at any moment. I watched her go with something approaching admiration. Whatever Lady Evangeline Vanderton might be guilty of, cowardice was not among her sins. Now, Hastings. Poirot turned back to the body, his expression sharpening into professional focus. We have perhaps 20 minutes before the police arrive, and this scene becomes complicated. Let us use them wisely. He knelt beside Marcus Ashworth's body, careful not to disturb anything, his keen eyes cataloguing every detail. Observe, mon ami. The champagne flute shattered beside his hand. He was drinking when the poison took effect. Dropped the glass as his body seized. Poirot leaned closer, sniffing delicately. Prussic acid. The scent of bitter almonds is unmistakable. Cyanide, I said grimly. Fast-acting. Very fast. Death within minutes, perhaps less. Poirot's gaze moved to Ashworth's throat. But these bruises, they trouble me. Strangulation leaves such marks, yet strangulation takes time. If he was poisoned, why attempt to strangle him as well? I considered this. Perhaps the killer wasn't sure the poison would work, wanted to make certain. Perhaps. Poirot did not sound convinced. Or perhaps the strangulation came first, an attempt that was interrupted, and the poison was administered afterward as a more certain method. That would suggest 2 attacks, 2 opportunities. I frowned. Difficult to manage in a crowded gala. Difficult, yes, but not impossible. Poirot rose, brushing invisible dust from his knees. Consider, Monsieur Ashworth argued publicly with Lord Philip, then came to the conservatory. Perhaps he came to meet someone. Perhaps he came to escape the crowd. Either way, he was alone long enough for someone to approach him. Lord Philip was heading this direction when we last saw him. Indeed, Poirot's expression remained neutral. And Lord Philip had just threatened Monsieur Ashworth before the entire room. Most convenient, would you not say? I understood his implication. Too convenient. A real murderer would hardly announce his intentions so publicly. Unless that murderer is very stupid, or very arrogant, or wishes us to believe exactly that. Poirot moved through the conservatory, examining the plants, the tiles, the arrangement of furniture. Someone has been clever, Hastings, or someone wishes to appear clever. The little grey cells, they must determine which. Near the conservatory's rear door, a service entrance leading to the gardens, Poirot paused. The door stood slightly ajar, admitting a sliver of cold night air. This door, it was locked when we arrived. I tried to remember. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. Poirot examined the lock, the handle, the frame. No signs of forcing. Either it was unlocked, or someone possessed a key. He peered out into the darkness. The gardens would provide excellent cover for someone wishing to approach or escape unseen. So the killer might not have been a guest at all. It is possible. But consider the champagne, Hastings. Poirot gestured to the broken glass. That flute came from the gala, the champagne being served tonight. Monsieur Ashworth did not bring it from outside. He took it from a servant's tray, or someone gave it to him. Someone who had poisoned it beforehand, précisément, and that suggests someone with access to the champagne service, a guest, a servant, he paused, or someone who moves between both worlds. I thought of Miss Helena Crane, circulating with quiet efficiency, ensuring glasses were filled. The secretary, who was neither guest nor servant, but something in between. Poirot, Miss Crane. I have not forgotten her, mon ami. Her expression when she watched Monsieur Ashworth and Lady Vanderton, that was not mere professional disapproval. That was personal, deeply personal. He turned from the door. We must speak with her. But first, he crossed to a small table near the body, upon which rested a leather notebook. Ashworth's, presumably. It bore his initials in gold on the cover. Poirot flipped it open with the tip of his pen. Appointments, notes, the usual business of a jeweller. He turned pages carefully. But here, see this? I leaned closer. In Ashworth's elegant hand, a single notation stood out. H.C. Saturday, 9:45. Conservatory. Must settle matters finally. H.C., I read. Helena Crane. So it would appear. Poirot's jaw tightened. An appointment in this very room at this very evening, and Monsieur Ashworth wished to settle matters finally. Most suggestive, Hastings. Most suggestive indeed. Inspector Graves arrived 20 minutes later with a contingent of uniformed officers. He was a solid, practical man with a walrus moustache, and the weary air of one who had seen too much of humanity's darker impulses. His expression, upon seeing Poirot, combined resignation with something approaching relief. Monsieur Poirot, Lady Vanderton mentioned you were consulting on security matters. I don't suppose you've already solved this one? Not yet, Inspector, but progress has been made. Poirot summarized our findings. The poison, the strangulation marks, the unlocked door, the appointment in Ashworth's notebook. Graves listened, making notes in his own battered pad. H.C. Helena Crane, the secretary. He looked up. We'll need to speak with her immediately. Agreed, but I would ask a favor, Inspector. Permit me to be present during the interviews. Lady Vanderton engaged my services to prevent a crime, and I feel responsible that a crime has nonetheless occurred. Against the diamonds? No. The diamonds remain secure in their case. Poirot's brow furrowed. Which raises an interesting question, does it not? The threatening letters spoke of theft, of the gala being Lady Vanderton's last celebration. Yet no attempt has been made on the jewels. Instead, a man is dead. Perhaps the murder interrupted the theft. Perhaps. Or perhaps the letters were never about the diamonds at all. Graves considered this. Misdirection, you mean? Someone wanted us looking at the jewels while they planned something else entirely. The little grey cells, they inclined toward that possibility. Poirot nodded toward the ballroom. Come, Inspector, let us interview the suspects while their memories are fresh and their nerves are frayed. Truth emerges most readily from those who are frightened. The interviews were conducted in Lady Vanderton's study, a small book-lined room away from the chaos of the disrupted gala. The guests had been informed that a serious incident required police presence, and while many had been permitted to leave after providing their names and addresses, those closest to the matter remained. Lord Philip Ashworth came first, brought by a constable from the library where he had been found, not fleeing, but slumped in an armchair with a whisky bottle. His earlier belligerence collapsed into sullen misery. I didn't kill him, he said before anyone asked. I know what it looked like, the argument, the threats, but I didn't. I went to the conservatory to get away from everyone. I never even saw him there. You did not see Monsieur Ashworth's body? Poirot asked. I didn't go that far in. It was dark and he flushed. I was being sick in the bushes near the door, if you must know. Too much champagne. When I finished, I went to the library for something stronger. Did anyone see you? I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. Philip ran his hands through his dishevelled hair. Look, I hated the man. I won't pretend otherwise. He was sniffing around my aunt, clearly after her money, and when I tried to warn her, she wouldn't listen. But I wouldn't kill him. I'm not that sort. What did you mean? Poirot asked quietly, when you said Monsieur Ashworth profited from your uncle's death. Philip's expression shuttered. Nothing. I was drunk, talking nonsense. I think not, Lord Philip. Poirot leaned forward. You spoke of knowing what he was, what he had been doing. These are not the words of a man talking nonsense. These are accusations. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Philip spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. My uncle trusted Marcus Ashworth, trusted him completely, gave him access to the family jewels, the family accounts, the family secrets. His hands clenched, and after my uncle died, certain pieces from the collection were different, inferior, as though someone had replaced the originals with copies. I felt Poirot go very still beside me. You believe Monsieur Ashworth substituted paste for genuine stones? I have no proof, but I've had other jewellers look at some of my aunt's pieces, quietly, without her knowledge, and they've raised questions. The stones are magnificent, they say, but something about the settings, the certificates, doesn't quite match. Philip's laugh was bitter. Of course, I can't say anything. I'm the black sheep, the gambler, the disappointment. Who would believe me over the charming Marcus Ashworth? Poirot sat back, his expression thoughtful. And the Donarelli Diamonds? Did you have concerns about them as well? I tried to. Philip shook his head. But Sir Reginald conducted the valuation, verified their authenticity. £250,000, genuine as the day they were cut. He spread his hands. So either I'm wrong about Ashworth, or he was smart enough to leave the most valuable pieces alone. Or, Poirot murmured, so quietly I almost missed it, he was smart enough to ensure the right person conducted the valuation. After Philip was escorted out, Poirot turned to me with eyes that gleamed with sudden intensity. Hastings, we must examine those diamonds. Tonight, before they are moved, before anything further occurs. You think they might be fakes? I think, mon ami, that a jeweller with intimate access to valuable stones and a reputation for charm might find it very profitable to substitute paste for genuine articles. And I think that if someone discovered this scheme, someone who stood to be ruined by its exposure, that person might be driven to desperate measures. You mean Ashworth was killed to prevent him from being exposed? Or Ashworth was killed by someone he had wronged? Someone he had deceived. Someone who had finally discovered the depth of his betrayal. Poirot rose. Come, the diamonds await, and I suspect they will tell us a story that no one wishes us to hear. We left the study together, stepping back into the shadowed corridors of Vanderton House. Behind us, the murmur of voices continued. Suspects being interviewed, statements being taken, the machinery of justice grinding forward. But I could not shake the feeling that the real truth lay elsewhere. In the glitter of diamonds that might not be diamonds at all. In the secrets of a charming jeweller who would never speak again. And in the trembling hands of a secretary who had perhaps far more reason for murder than anyone suspected. Chapter 4. Whispers in Silk. Before we could examine the diamonds, however, Inspector Graves insisted on completing the immediate interviews. The hour had grown late, past midnight now, and the remaining guests had been sent home with instructions not to leave London. Only the principal figures remained: Lady Vanderton, Miss Crane, Sir Reginald Fossey, and the household staff. Miss Helena Crane was brought to the study next. She entered with her chin raised and her hands clasped before her, the posture of one bracing for an ordeal. The mouse-brown hair had come slightly loose from its severe arrangement, softening her features. And without her spectacles, lost somewhere in the evening's chaos, she explained, her grey eyes appeared larger, more vulnerable. And yet, I noted, her fingers did not tremble now. Whatever fear had gripped her earlier had been replaced by something colder. Something like resolve. Miss Crane. Inspector Graves consulted his notes. You are Lady Vanderton's personal secretary. How long have you held this position? 3 years, Inspector. Her voice was steady. Lady Vanderton engaged me shortly after Sir Arthur's death. She required assistance managing the household and her charitable commitments. And in those 3 years, did you come to know Marcus Ashworth? A pause, almost imperceptible, but Poirot caught it. I saw his eyes narrow. I knew him professionally, Miss Crane said carefully. He visited Vanderton House on matters relating to Lady Vanderton's jewellery collection. We exchanged pleasantries, nothing more. Poirot stirred. And yet, mademoiselle, we have found an entry in Monsieur Ashworth's notebook. H.C. Saturday, 9:45, conservatory. Must settle matters finally. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Your initials, I believe. Your appointment. What matters did Monsieur Ashworth wish to settle? Miss Crane's composure flickered. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment I glimpsed something raw beneath the professional mask. Anger, perhaps, or grief, or some complicated mixture of both. I don't know what you're implying, Monsieur Poirot. I imply nothing. I merely ask. Poirot's voice was gentle, almost kind. You were observed this evening, mademoiselle, watching Monsieur Ashworth and Lady Vanderton together. Your expression was remarkable. Not the expression of one who shares only professional acquaintance with a man. You're mistaken. Hercule Poirot is rarely mistaken. He leaned forward. The little grey cells, they observe what others overlook. The way you looked at him, it was personal, deeply personal. And the way you looked at Lady Vanderton. He shook his head slowly. That was hatred, mademoiselle, pure and unmistakable. Silence filled the room. Miss Crane stood rigid, her hands now clenched at her sides, her breathing shallow and quick. Miss Crane, Graves said, more gently than I expected. A man is dead. If you know something, anything, that might help us understand why, you must tell us. Concealing information in a murder investigation is a serious matter. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, her shoulders sagged. The rigid posture collapsed, and suddenly she looked smaller, younger, infinitely weary. Very well. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You want the truth. I'll give you the truth, but you won't like it, Inspector. None of you will. She sank into the chair before the desk, her hands falling open in her lap. Marcus Ashworth was my husband. I confess I was not the only one struck dumb by this revelation. Even Poirot's eyebrows rose appreciably, though whether from genuine surprise or theatrical acknowledgement, I could not say. Your husband, Graves repeated. We married 5 years ago, in secret. Marcus was ambitious. He was building his reputation, cultivating wealthy clients, and he believed a wife would be an encumbrance, a distraction from his work. Her laugh was bitter. He promised we would announce it when the time was right, when he was established, when it was safe. But the time was never right, Poirot said quietly. No. Miss Crane's grey eyes glistened. The time was never right. And then Sir Arthur Vanderton died, and Lady Vanderton became a widow, and suddenly Marcus found a new opportunity. He began an affair with Lady Vanderton. He seduced her. The word came out sharp, venomous, made himself indispensable. The charming jeweller, always available, always attentive. She had no idea he was married, no idea he was using her. Using her how? Graves asked. Miss Crane hesitated. Then, I don't know the details. Marcus was careful. He never told me everything. But I knew something was wrong. He had money suddenly. More money than his legitimate business could explain. And he was nervous, frightened almost. In the weeks before tonight, he became different, secretive. He said he was planning something that would set us free. Set you free? He said he was going to end things with Lady Vanderton, tell her the truth. He said we would go abroad, Paris perhaps, or Rome, and start fresh. She shook her head. I wanted to believe him. God help me. After 5 years of lies and broken promises, I still wanted to believe him. Poirot studied her with those penetrating eyes. And the appointment in the conservatory, what was that about? He asked me to meet him there at 9:45, said he had something important to tell me, something that would change everything. Her voice broke. I went, but when I arrived, the conservatory was dark and I lost my nerve. I stood outside for several minutes, trying to gather my courage, and then I heard voices, angry voices. Whose voices? I couldn't tell. The words were muffled. But one of them was Marcus. I recognized his tone, even if I couldn't make out what he was saying. And then, she pressed a hand to her mouth, there was a sound, a thud, like something falling, and then silence. What did you do? I ran. Shame coloured her voice. I was frightened. I don't know what I thought. I went back to the ballroom and tried to pretend nothing had happened. And then, when you found him... She looked up at Poirot, her eyes swimming with tears. I didn't kill him, Monsieur Poirot. I know how it looks. I know I had every reason to hate him. But I loved him, despite everything. Despite the lies and the betrayals and the endless waiting, I loved him. Poirot was silent for a long moment. Then he asked very softly, the voice arguing with your husband, was it a man's voice or a woman's? Miss Crane frowned, thinking, I'm not certain. It was low, intense, but whether male or female? She shook her head. I truly couldn't say. And the time? You are certain it was 9:45? I checked my watch before I went. Lady Vanderton insists on punctuality. It was 9:43 when I left the ballroom. And how long did you stand outside the conservatory before you heard the voices? 2 minutes, perhaps 3. So the argument occurred at approximately 9:46. Poirot nodded slowly. And Monsieur Ashworth's body was discovered at 10:15. That leaves nearly 30 minutes unaccounted for. Graves made a note. Plenty of time for the killer to escape. Through the garden door, perhaps. Perhaps. But Poirot's tone suggested he was not entirely satisfied. He turned back to Miss Crane. One more question, mademoiselle. Did your husband ever speak to you about the Donarelli Diamonds specifically? Miss Crane's expression flickered. Surprise, uncertainty, and something else. Fear? He mentioned them. Said they were extraordinary. The pinnacle of his career to work with such stones. She hesitated, but there was something else. A few weeks ago, he said something strange. He said the Donarelli Diamonds were the perfect lie. I asked what he meant, but he just laughed and changed the subject. The perfect lie, Poirot repeated softly. Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful. After Miss Crane was escorted out, Poirot rose and began pacing the small study, his hands clasped behind his back. Well, Poirot, I asked, do you believe her? I believe she told us the truth, or a version of it. He paused by the window, gazing out at the darkened garden. She is intelligent, this Miss Crane. She revealed much, but she also chose her words carefully. Notice how she said she didn't kill him. Not, I am innocent. A subtle distinction, but a meaningful one. You think she's hiding something? I think everyone in this house is hiding something, Hastings. The question is which secret is worth killing for. He turned. Come, we have delayed long enough. The diamonds must be examined. Lady Vanderton met us in the ballroom, where the Donarelli diamonds still blazed in their glass case. The room had emptied now. The chandeliers dimmed, the champagne flutes cleared away. Only the security guards remained, standing at rigid attention by the doors. Monsieur Poirot. Lady Vanderton's face was drawn, aged by the evening's horrors. Inspector Graves said you wished to examine the diamonds. May I ask why? Concerns have been raised, madame, about the authenticity of certain pieces in your collection. Poirot's voice was kind but firm. I wish to put those concerns to rest. Authenticity? She stiffened. The diamonds were verified by Sir Reginald Forster himself. They are genuine. Then you have nothing to fear from a second examination. For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Her eyes darted to the case, then back to Poirot, and I saw calculation behind the grief, a weighing of options. Very well, she said finally, if it will help resolve this dreadful matter. She produced a key from her bodice and unlocked the glass case. Poirot, donning white cotton gloves, reached inside and carefully lifted the necklace. Even in the dimmed light, the stones were magnificent. They caught what illumination remained and transformed it, fragmenting it into 1,000 dancing rainbows. The Donarelli heart at the centre seemed almost alive, pulsing with cold fire. Poirot carried the necklace to a nearby table, where Inspector Graves had placed a bright electric lamp. He examined each stone in turn, tilting the necklace this way and that, peering at facets and settings with the intensity of a surgeon. Hastings, he said quietly, come here. I joined him at the table. He pointed to the central stone, the legendary Donarelli heart. What do you see? I looked. The stone was extraordinary, enormous, brilliant, catching the light with almost supernatural beauty. I see a diamond, I said helplessly, a rather spectacular one. Look closer, at the setting, the prongs that hold the stone in place. I bent forward, squinting, and then I saw it, or rather, I saw what Poirot wanted me to see. The prongs were slightly different from those holding the surrounding stones, right? Newer, less worn, as though they had been recently worked. The setting has been altered, I said, précisément. Poirot's voice was grim. This stone has been removed and replaced, recently, within the past month, I would estimate. Lady Vanderton stepped forward, her face pale. What are you saying? Poirot set down the necklace gently. I am saying, madame, that this diamond, the Donarelli heart, is not the stone that was originally set in this necklace. It may be genuine, or it may be paste, but either way, it is a substitution. That's impossible. Lady Vanderton's voice rose. Sir Reginald examined them. He verified. Sir Reginald verified what he was shown. Poirot's eyes were dark with suspicion. The question is whether he was shown the truth, or whether he was part of the deception. "You're accusing Sir Reginald of fraud?" "I am accusing no one yet, madame, but I am beginning to understand why Marcus Ashworth had to die." Poirot turned to face her fully. "Your jeweller was running a scheme of substitution, replacing genuine stones with copies, selling the originals, pocketing the profits. Lord Philip suspected it. Perhaps others did too. And the Donarelli Diamonds, with their immense value and their planned donation to the museum, represented either his greatest triumph or his greatest risk," I finished. "Indeed." Poirot nodded slowly. "If the museum's experts examined these diamonds and discovered they were false, the scandal would be catastrophic. Ashworth would be ruined, and anyone complicit in his scheme would be ruined with him." Lady Vanderton sank into a chair, her composure finally crumbling. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear to you, I didn't know. Marcus said he loved me. He said—" She couldn't finish. Her hands covered her face, and her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Poirot watched her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he turned to me. "We must find Sir Reginald Fossé, Hastings, before the night is out. If he was Ashworth's accomplice, he will already be planning his escape. And if he was merely a dupe," he paused, "then someone went to great lengths to ensure he would verify diamonds that were already fakes." "But who?" I asked. "Who would have the skill and the access to switch the stones?" Poirot's gaze drifted back to the diamonds, blazing innocently in their case. "Who indeed, mon ami? Who indeed?" Chapter 5. The Jeweller's Eye. We found Sir Reginald Foss in the library, nursing a brandy with the brittle calm of a man watching his world crumble. He had not attempted to flee, which surprised me, given Poirot's suspicions, but sat in a leather armchair near the dying fire, his compact frame seeming somehow diminished. When we entered, he looked up with eyes that held neither surprise nor defiance, only a weary resignation. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings." He gestured to the chairs opposite. "I wondered when you would come. I assume you've examined the diamonds." "We have." Poirot settled into the offered seat, his keen gaze fixed on Fossé's face. "And we have discovered certain irregularities." "Irregularities," Fossé laughed, a hollow, humourless sound. "A delicate word for fraud. For the destruction of a man's reputation. For the end of everything I've built." "Then you admit knowledge of the substitution?" Fossé drained his brandy and set down the glass with deliberate care. "I admit nothing of the kind. What I admit, Monsieur Poirot, is that I have been made a fool, a dupe, a patsy, as the Americans say." His jaw tightened. "And I intend to see the responsible party pay for it." Poirot leaned forward. "Explain, if you please. 3 weeks ago, I conducted the standard pre-display valuation of the Donarelli Diamonds. I examined every stone, verified every setting, compared every piece against the original documentation from the Vanderton archives." Fossé's hands clenched on the armrests. "They were genuine. I would stake my life on it. The diamonds I examined 3 weeks ago were the authentic Donarelli set. And yet tonight, the central stone shows signs of recent alteration, which means the substitution occurred after my examination." Fossé's eyes blazed with sudden fury. "Someone switched the stones in the past 3 weeks, and arranged matters so that my verification would cover their crime. When the museum discovers the fraud, who will be blamed? Not the thief, the insurance assessor who certified fakes as genuine." I saw the logic of it immediately. "You're saying someone used your verification as a shield?" "Precisely. Fosse nodded grimly. And there is only one person who had both the skill and the access to make such a substitution. Marcus Ashworth. Monsieur Ashworth is dead, Poirot observed, and perhaps that is why. Fosse leaned forward. Consider, Monsieur Poirot. Ashworth was running a substitution scheme. Lord Philip suspected it, and I'll wager others did too. He replaced genuine stones with paste, sold the originals, and trusted his charm to keep anyone from looking too closely. But the Donarelli Diamonds were different. They were his masterpiece, his final score before disappearing with his profits. Fosse's voice dripped with contempt. He knew the diamonds were destined for the British Museum. He knew they would eventually be examined by experts far more thorough than a society insurance assessor. So he planned his escape, switch the stones, collect whatever payment he had arranged, and vanish before the fraud was discovered. But something went wrong, I said. Someone discovered his plan, someone who couldn't afford to let him succeed. Fosse spread his hands. Perhaps a partner he intended to betray. Perhaps a victim who finally saw through his charm. Either way, Ashworth became a liability, and liabilities are eliminated. Poirot was silent for a long moment, his fingertips pressed together in his characteristic pose of contemplation. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost musing. Your theory has merit, Sir Reginald, but it raises a question. If Ashworth made the substitution after your examination, he would have needed access to the diamonds. The case has been under guard since the gala preparations began. How did he manage it? Fosse hesitated. I assumed he had some arrangement with the household. A servant, perhaps. Or someone gave him access willingly. Fosse's gaze shifted uncomfortably. Lady Vanderton trusted him implicitly. If he asked to examine the diamonds privately, to verify the settings, to clean the stones, she would have agreed without question. And did he make such a request? I don't know. You would have to ask Lady Vanderton. Poirot rose, moving to the fireplace and gazing into the dying embers. There is another possibility you have not considered, Sir Reginald. What if Ashworth did not make the substitution at all? Fosse blinked. I don't understand. What if someone else switched the stones? Someone who wished to frame Ashworth for the fraud? Someone who knew his reputation for such schemes and used it as a convenient cover? Poirot turned. In such a case, Ashworth's death might not be the silencing of a criminal. It might be the elimination of the only person who could prove his innocence. The colour drained from Fosse's face. You're suggesting, but who would... That, Sir Reginald, is what the little grey cells must determine. Poirot retrieved his hat and gloves from the side table. One more question before we leave. On the night you examined the diamonds, 3 weeks ago, who else was present? Fosse thought carefully. Lady Vanderton, of course. Miss Crane, who took notes for the insurance documentation, and Ashworth himself, who assisted with the technical aspects. Anyone else? Servants? Family members? Lord Philip arrived briefly. Some dispute about a family heirloom he wished to have valued separately. Lady Vanderton sent him away rather sharply, as I recall, and... Fosse frowned. There was a footman. Young fellow, rather nervous. He brought refreshments partway through. Do you recall his name? I'm afraid not. Miss Crane would know. She manages the household staff. Poirot nodded slowly. Merci, Sir Reginald. You have been most helpful. We left Fosse in the library and made our way through the silent corridors of Vanderton House. The hour had crept past 2 in the morning, and the great house had taken on the quality of a mausoleum. shadows pooling in corners. The tick of clocks unnaturally loud, the scent of dying flowers drifting from abandoned arrangements. "What do you think, Poirot?" I asked quietly. "Is Fosse telling the truth?" "I think he believes he is telling the truth." Poirot's voice was thoughtful. Whether his beliefs align with reality remains to be seen, but his theory is interesting. The idea that Ashworth was killed not to silence him, but to frame him. To ensure that when the fraud was discovered, all suspicion would fall on a dead man who could not defend himself. A rather cold-blooded calculation. Murder is always cold-blooded, Hastings, whatever passions may drive it. Poirot paused at an intersection of corridors. "But there is something that troubles me. The timeline. The timeline? Sir Reginald examined the diamonds 3 weeks ago. Miss Crane says her husband spoke of the perfect lie a few weeks ago, presumably around the same time. Lord Philip has suspected fraud for months, yet said nothing publicly. And the threatening letters began arriving a fortnight ago." He shook his head. Too many events clustering together. Too many people suddenly aware of secrets that had been hidden for years. Something triggered this cascade, Hastings. Something set all these pieces in motion. The announcement of the museum donation. Perhaps. That announcement was made 3 weeks ago, the same time as Sir Reginald's examination. It would have forced anyone involved in fraud to act quickly, before the museum's experts could discover the truth. Poirot resumed walking. But it would also have alerted anyone who suspected fraud that time was running out. If you knew valuable diamonds were about to be donated, diamonds you believed might be fake, what would you do? Try to prove the fraud before the donation occurred. Or, Poirot said quietly, ensure that the person responsible could never escape justice. We had reached the servants' quarters now, a narrow corridor leading to modest bedrooms and the staff common areas. Poirot knocked on a door marked "Housekeeper" and waited. After a moment, it opened to reveal a stout grey-haired woman in a hastily donned dressing gown. Mrs. Blackwood, Blackwood the butler's wife, I presumed, regarded us with the suspicious efficiency of one accustomed to guarding her domain. "Monsieur Poirot, it's very late. Forgive the intrusion, madame. A brief question only. Among the footmen employed by Lady Vanderton, is there one who is related to Miss Crane?" Mrs. Blackwood's eyes widened slightly. Theodore Crane. He's Miss Helena's cousin. She arranged his position here 6 months ago. Quiet boy, keeps to himself." "And where might we find young Theodore at this hour?" "His room is at the end of the corridor." "But surely you don't think—" "I think nothing yet, madame. I merely wish to speak with him." We thanked her and proceeded to the indicated door. Poirot knocked, gently at first, then more firmly. No response. "Theodore?" Poirot called. "Theodore Crane? A word, if you please." Silence. Poirot tried the handle. The door swung open onto darkness. I reached for the light switch and illuminated a small, neat room. Bed made with military precision, few personal effects, everything in its proper place. But Theodore Crane was not there. And on the bed, placed prominently as though left to be found, lay a woman's glove. Cream-coloured silk, elegant, with a small monogram embroidered at the wrist. Poirot picked it up with careful fingers, examined the monogram, and drew a sharp breath. "H.C., I read. Helena Crane. So it would appear." Poirot's expression was troubled. "Theodore has left us a message, Hastings. The question is whether he means to implicate his cousin, or to warn us that she is in danger. Where would he have gone? That is what we must discover." Poirot pocketed the glove and turned toward the door. "Quickly, Hastings. I fear we are running out of time." We found Inspector Graves in the entrance hall, coordinating the final stages of the night's investigation. His face was grey with fatigue, but he snapped to attention when Poirot approached. "Theodore Crane," Poirot said without preamble, "Miss Helena Crane's cousin. He serves as a footman in this house. He was present during Sir Reginald's examination of the diamonds 3 weeks ago, and he has now disappeared, leaving behind evidence that points to his cousin." Graves swore under his breath. "You think he's the killer?" "I think he knows something. Whether that something makes him guilty or merely frightened, we must determine." Poirot's jaw set with determination. "Have your men searched the grounds, the gardens, the stables, any outbuilding where a man might hide? And if we find him, bring him to me, alive and unharmed, if possible." Poirot turned to face the darkened windows, beyond which the first grey hints of dawn were beginning to appear. "The pieces are falling into place, Inspector. The little grey cells, they begin to see the pattern. But one piece remains missing, and I fear that piece may prove the most important of all." I followed his gaze into the greying darkness. Somewhere out there, Theodore Crane was running. But from what? And toward whom? The answers, I sensed, would determine whether justice was served, or whether another life would be claimed before this night was through. Chapter 6. Unraveling Threads. Dawn broke grey and cold over Vanderton House, painting the gardens in shades of pewter and ash. I had not slept, none of us had, and fatigue sat heavy on my shoulders as Poirot and I stood at the morning-room windows, watching the police search the grounds. They found Theodore Crane at 6:30, huddled in the gardener's shed at the far corner of the estate. He came without resistance, a slight young man with Helena's grey eyes, and a terror that seemed to radiate from every pore. When they brought him into the house, his gaze darted everywhere, seeking escape, or perhaps seeking someone specific. "Theodore." Poirot's voice was gentle as he faced the young footman across Lady Vanderton's study. Inspector Graves stood by the door, notebook ready. "You have caused us considerable concern. Why did you run?" Theodore's Adam's apple bobbed convulsively. "I was frightened, sir. When I heard about Mr. Ashworth, when I saw the police everywhere, I panicked." "Panicked? An innocent man does not panic, Theodore. An innocent man answers questions and trusts in justice." Poirot tilted his head. "Unless, of course, he fears that justice will not see the truth, that the evidence will point in the wrong direction." "I don't know what you mean, sir." "I think you do." Poirot produced the cream silk glove from his pocket. "This was found on your bed. Your cousin's glove, bearing her initials, left prominently, as though meant to be discovered." "Why?" Theodore stared at the glove, and something shifted in his expression, fear giving way to something more complicated. "Resignation, perhaps, or relief. I found it," he said quietly, "in the conservatory, after Mr. Ashworth was killed." Poirot went very still. "You were in the conservatory? Not when it happened, after?" Theodore's hands twisted together in his lap. "I was serving champagne during the gala. Around 10:15, I noticed Miss Helena, my cousin, returning to the ballroom from the direction of the conservatory. She looked wrong, pale, shaking. Her hair was coming loose, and she was missing her glove." "Go on." "I didn't think much of it at first. The evening was chaotic. But then I heard the whispers, that a body had been found, that Mr. Ashworth was dead, and I saw Helena's face when Lady Vanderton made the announcement." Theodore swallowed hard. "She didn't look surprised, sir. She looked relieved." The word hung in the air like an accusation. "So I went to look," Theodore continued, "after the police arrived and everyone was distracted. I slipped into the conservatory through the garden door. It was unlocked. And I found the glove near where the body had been, half hidden under a fern, and you took it. I had to." Theodore's voice cracked. "She's my cousin, sir. She gave me this position when no one else would have me. She's the only family I have left. I couldn't just leave it there for the police to find." Poirot studied the young man with those penetrating eyes. "But you did not destroy the glove. You did not hide it properly. You left it on your bed, where it would certainly be discovered. Why?" Theodore was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Because I don't know if she did it, sir. And if she did—" He looked up, his grey eyes swimming with anguish. "If she did, then maybe she had a reason. Maybe Mr. Ashworth deserved what he got. But I'm not clever enough to know, and I'm not brave enough to decide. So I thought, if someone found the glove, someone smarter than me, they could figure out the truth. You placed the decision in our hands." "Yes, sir." Theodore's shoulders sagged. "I'm sorry. I know it was cowardly, but I didn't know what else to do." After Theodore was escorted out, not arrested, but confined to his room under guard, Poirot stood at the window, gazing at the grey morning light with an expression I had rarely seen. Troubled, almost sorrowful. "Well, Poirot," I asked, "it seems fairly damning. Helena's glove at the murder scene, her suspicious behaviour, her admitted hatred of Ashworth, Theodore's testimony about her expression when the death was announced. It seems so, yes." Poirot did not turn from the window. "And yet, Hastings, the little grey cells, they are not satisfied." "Not satisfied? What more do you need?" "Precision, mon ami. Logic. The pieces fit, but they fit too easily. Like a puzzle where someone has forced the wrong pieces into place." He turned at last, his brow furrowed. "Consider, Helena Crane is an intelligent woman. Meticulous, precise. She has managed Lady Vanderton's household for 3 years without fault. Would such a woman commit murder in a public venue, leave her glove at the scene, and then return to the ballroom looking obviously distressed? Perhaps she panicked. Passion overcomes precision. Perhaps, but there is another thing." Poirot moved to the desk, where the evidence from the evening had been assembled. He picked up Ashworth's leather notebook, flipping to the damning entry. "H.C., Saturday 9:45, conservatory, must settle matters finally. Helena's appointment. So we assumed, but H.C. could refer to someone else entirely." Poirot set down the notebook. What if these initials belong not to Helena Crane, but to another person? Someone whose name we have not yet considered. I frowned. Who else could H.C. possibly be? Poirot was silent for a moment. Then he crossed to the door and summoned a passing constable. "Bring me Sir Reginald Fosse, immediately." Fosse arrived looking haggard, his earlier composure entirely eroded by the sleepless night. He sank into a chair without being asked, his hands trembling slightly. "Sir Reginald," Poirot began without preamble, "when you examined the Donarelli Diamonds 3 weeks ago, you mentioned that Lord Philip arrived briefly during the examination. He wished to have a family heirloom valued separately." "Yes, that's correct. Lady Vanderton sent him away." "And you said there was a footman, Theodore Crane, who brought refreshments. Also correct. Was there anyone else, anyone at all who entered the room, even briefly?" Fossey frowned, thinking. Wait. Yes, there was someone. A courier arrived with documents for Lady Vanderton. Insurance papers, I believe. Documents that required her signature before the valuation could proceed. Poirot leaned forward intently. And who brought these documents? A clerk from Hartley's office, the solicitor. I don't recall his name. Thin young man, rather forgettable. Miss Crane signed for the delivery, and he left. Did this clerk approach the diamonds? Did he have opportunity to examine them? Fossey's face paled as the implication struck him. He did pause near the display. Miss Crane was showing him out, and he stopped to admire the stones, just for a moment. I didn't think anything of it. Everyone admires the Donarelli Diamonds. And you are certain this clerk came from Mr. Hartley's office? That's what he said. He had papers bearing Hartley's letterhead. Poirot rose abruptly. Hastings, we must visit Mr. Hartley immediately. There is something here, something we have overlooked, and time is of the essence. Mr. By Hartley's Lincoln's Inn office was not yet open when we arrived, but Poirot's reputation and Inspector Graves's badge gained us swift admittance. The elderly solicitor, summoned from his breakfast, met us in his dusty chambers with evident alarm. Monsieur Poirot, what on earth, at this hour? Forgive the intrusion, Monsieur Hartley, but the matter is urgent. Poirot wasted no time on pleasantries. 3 weeks ago, you sent a clerk to Vanderton House with insurance documents for Lady Vanderton's signature. I must know the name of that clerk. Hartley blinked. 3 weeks ago. I sent no one to Vanderton House. The insurance documents were handled entirely by post. The words landed like a thunderclap. You are certain? Poirot pressed. A thin young man, carrying papers with your letterhead? Absolutely certain. I have only 2 clerks, and neither was dispatched to Vanderton House on any business. Hartley's face creased with concern. Someone impersonated my office? To what end? But Poirot was already turning to leave, his eyes blazing with the fierce light of revelation. To gain access to the diamonds, Monsieur Hartley. To examine them under the guise of legitimate business. To plan a substitution that would be blamed on Marcus Ashworth. He paused at the door. Tell me, the insurance documents Lady Vanderton supposedly signed, did you ever receive them? Hartley moved to his filing cabinet, rifling through folders with trembling fingers. After a moment, he extracted a sheaf of papers. These arrived by post 4 days after the date in question. Lady Vanderton's signature, properly witnessed by Miss Crane. He held them out. Is something wrong with them? Poirot examined the documents briefly, then handed them to me. The signature, Hastings. Look at it closely. I studied Lady Vanderton's elegant script. It appeared genuine enough, the same flowing hand I had seen on her correspondence. But something about the letters seemed slightly off. The pressure inconsistent, the flourishes too deliberate. A forgery? I asked. A very good forgery, but a forgery nonetheless. Poirot's jaws set with grim determination. Someone created false documents to gain access to the diamonds. Someone then forged Lady Vanderton's signature to make the visit appear legitimate. And that someone knew exactly when the diamonds would be examined, because that someone was present in the household. Watching, waiting, planning. Helena Crane witnessed the signature, I said slowly. She manages the household. She would have known about the examination in advance. Indeed she would. Poirot moved toward the door. But so would anyone with access to her information, her calendar, her correspondence. He paused, a new thought striking him. Or her cousin, who serves as footman and moves through the household unseen. Theodore, but he seemed genuinely frightened. Frightened, yes. But of what? Poirot's eyes narrowed. He said he found the glove and took it to protect Helena. But what if he placed the glove there himself? What if the cousin he claims to be protecting is actually the cousin he is framing? My head spun with the implications. But why would Theodore frame Helena? Because Helena is the obvious suspect, mon ami. The wronged wife. The woman with motive, means, and opportunity. If Helena is arrested for murder, who will think to look further? Who will suspect the quiet footman who seemed only to be protecting his family? Poirot strode out into the grey morning, his mind clearly racing ahead of his feet. We must return to Vanderton House immediately, Hastings. The breakthrough. It comes at last. The little grey cells, they see clearly now. He raised his hand to summon a cab. Theodore Crane is not what he appears, and before this day is done, I will prove it. In the cab rattling back toward Mayfair, I studied Poirot's profile. The sharp concentration, the slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You know who the killer is, I said. I have a theory, Hastings. A theory that explains everything. The murder, the diamonds, the glove, the threatening letters. But a theory is not proof. His fingers drummed against his knee. For proof, I require a confession, and for a confession, I require a trap. What sort of trap? Poirot's smile widened, though it held no warmth, the sort that only a guilty conscience cannot resist. Tonight, Hastings, we gather all our suspects in the drawing-room. And there, before them all, Hercule Poirot will reveal the truth and watch the killer betray themselves. The cab lurched through the London streets, carrying us toward the final confrontation. I felt the familiar thrill of approaching resolution, the sense that all the scattered threads were about to be woven into a single damning tapestry. But beneath the excitement lurked an uneasy awareness. Someone in Vanderton House had killed once already. And cornered killers, as Poirot often reminded me, were the most dangerous of all. Chapter 7. The Final Facet. The drawing-room of Vanderton House had been arranged with theatrical precision. Chairs formed a loose semicircle before the marble fireplace, where a modest fire crackled against the evening chill. The curtains were drawn, the lamps lit, and the crystal chandeliers overhead cast their light upon a gathering that bristled with tension. I stood near the door, observing the assembled suspects as they took their seats. Lady Vanderton occupied the central position, her face a mask of exhausted composure. To her left sat Lord Philip Ashworth, his earlier belligerence replaced by a sullen wariness. Sir Reginald Foss perched on the edge of his chair, fingers drumming nervously against his knee, and on the settee near the window, Helena Crane sat rigid and pale, her grey eyes fixed on some middle distance. Beside her, under the watchful eye of a constable, Theodore Crane hunched with his hands clasped between his knees, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Inspector Graves stood by the fireplace, his notebook ready, and Poirot, immaculate as ever despite the sleepless night, positioned himself before the mantelpiece like an actor taking the stage. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice carrying the calm authority that always preceded his revelations. "We are gathered to unveil a truth that has lain hidden beneath layers of deception, misdirection, and carefully constructed lies. The murder of Marcus Ashworth was not a crime of passion, nor a crime of opportunity. It was a crime of calculation, planned weeks in advance, executed with precision, and designed to destroy not one life, but several. He paused, letting his gaze travel across the assembled faces. When I was first consulted by Lady Vanderton, she feared for the safety of the Donarelli Diamonds. Anonymous letters had threatened theft, disaster, ruin. She believed someone meant to steal her jewels. Poirot shook his head slowly. She was wrong. The letters were never about the diamonds. They were about fear, about misdirection, about ensuring that when the crime occurred, everyone would be looking in the wrong direction. "What crime?" Lord Philip demanded. "The diamonds weren't stolen. They're still sitting in their bloody case." "The diamonds were not stolen, none, but they were replaced." Poirot's eyes glinted. "The Donarelli set currently in Lady Vanderton's possession is not the genuine article. The central stone, the legendary Donarelli heart, is paste. A magnificent forgery, but a forgery nonetheless. The original was removed and substituted sometime in the past 3 weeks." Lady Vanderton gasped. Sir Reginald went pale. "But I verified them," Fossey protested. 3 weeks ago, I examined every stone, and 3 weeks ago they were genuine." Poirot nodded. "The substitution occurred after your examination, Sir Reginald. That was the genius of the plan. Your verification would serve as a shield, protecting the thief from suspicion. When the museum eventually discovered the fraud, you would be blamed, and the true criminal would be long gone." "But who?" Lady Vanderton's voice trembled. "Who could have done such a thing?" "Ah." Poirot raised a finger. "That is the question, is it not? Let us consider the candidates." He turned to Lord Philip. "Lord Philip Ashworth, you had motive. Gambling debts, resentment toward your aunt's refusal to share the family wealth, and a public confrontation with Marcus Ashworth on the night of his death. You threatened him before 200 witnesses." Philip's face flushed. "I was drunk. I didn't mean you did not kill him." Poirot cut him off with a wave. "Your alibi is weak, but your lack of relevant skills is decisive. The substitution of diamonds requires expertise, the hand of a trained jeweler or a master forger. You possess neither qualification. Moreover, your public threats made you the obvious suspect. No intelligent killer announces their intentions so loudly." Philip slumped with visible relief. Poirot turned next to Sir Reginald. "Sir Reginald Fossey, you had access to the diamonds and the expertise to evaluate them. If you were corrupt, you could have facilitated the substitution, verified paste as genuine, provided cover for the thief. The fraud would have destroyed your reputation, yes, but only if discovered. A corrupt assessor might risk much for a sufficient reward." Fossey opened his mouth to protest, but Poirot continued. "However, Sir Reginald, you were not corrupt. You were used. The true criminal needed your verification to make the substitution appear legitimate. They needed your reputation, your expertise, your unwitting cooperation. You were a tool, not a conspirator. And when you realized what had happened, your outrage was genuine. A guilty man would have fled. You remained, demanding answers." Fossey sagged with relief, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Which brings us," Poirot said, his voice softening, "to the more difficult suspects." He turned to Helena Crane, whose grey eyes finally rose to meet his. "Miss Helena Crane, or should I say, Mrs. Marcus Ashworth?" A murmur rippled through the room. Yes, the secret wife, abandoned, betrayed, replaced in her husband's affections by Lady Vanderton's wealth and position. You had every reason to hate Marcus Ashworth. You admitted as much yourself. Helena said nothing. Her hands were perfectly still in her lap. "You were observed watching your husband and Lady Vanderton with an expression of undisguised hatred. You had an appointment with him in the conservatory at 9:45, the very location where he died. You were seen returning from that direction, pale and shaken, missing a glove. And that glove, Poirot produced the cream silk article from his pocket, was found at the murder scene. It was planted, Helena said quietly. I lost it earlier in the evening. Anyone could have taken it. Anyone, yes, but not everyone had reason to frame you. Poirot set down the glove. You see, Miss Crane, you were meant to be arrested for this murder. Every piece of evidence points to you, too neatly, too conveniently. The initials in the notebook, the glove, the witnessed argument, the motive. He shook his head. It is, as the English say, too good to be true. Helena's breath caught. You believe me innocent? I believe, mademoiselle, that you have been most expertly betrayed. Poirot's gaze shifted. By someone who knew your secrets, someone who had access to your movements, your correspondence, your schedule, someone who could take your glove without being noticed, forge documents in your presence, and move through this household like a shadow. Every eye in the room turned to Theodore Crane. The young footman's face had gone the colour of old wax. His hands, still clasped between his knees, began to tremble. Theodore. Poirot's voice was almost gentle. Theodore Crane, the devoted cousin who secured a position in this household 6 months ago. Arranged, we are told, by Miss Helena herself. The quiet young man who served champagne at the gala, who was present during the diamond examination, who had access to every room, every secret, every opportunity. I didn't, Theodore's voice cracked. I was protecting Helena. You were framing Helena. Poirot's gentleness vanished, replaced by steel. You took her glove and placed it at the murder scene. You fled the house, not from fear, but to draw attention to yourself, to ensure the glove would be discovered, the evidence assembled. You wished to appear the frightened, loyal cousin protecting his family. Instead, you revealed yourself as the architect of her destruction. That's not true. Then explain this. Poirot withdrew a folded document from his jacket. Mr. Hartley has confirmed that no clerk was sent to Vanderton House 3 weeks ago. Yet Sir Reginald clearly recalls a young man, thin, forgettable, who arrived with insurance papers, admired the diamonds, and departed. A man who gained access through forged documents and forged credentials. Theodore's face contorted. The documents bore Lady Vanderton's signature, forged. Poirot's voice rose. Miss Crane witnessed that signature, believing it genuine, but she did not see it written. She saw only the completed document, presented by the clerk, who had prepared it in advance. A clerk who was not a clerk at all. A clerk who was, in fact, Theodore Crane in borrowed clothes, playing a role. You can't prove that. Can I not? Poirot smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. The porter at Mr. Hartley's office keeps a log of all visitors. No one matching your description visited that day. However, a pawnbroker in Whitechapel recalls a young man, thin, nervous grey eyes, who sold him a diamond of exceptional quality 3 days ago. A diamond that matches the description of the Donarelli heart. The colour drained from Theodore's face entirely. The pawnbroker noted the young man's hands, Poirot continued. Roughened, he said, working hands, the hands of a servant, not a gentleman. He thought it strange that such a person would possess such a stone. He noted the transaction carefully, in case of future inquiry. Theodore's breathing had become ragged. His eyes darted toward the door, but the constable stood firm. You planned this for months, Poirot said, advancing slowly. You ingratiated yourself with your cousin, secured a position in this household, and studied its routines. You learned about the Donarelli Diamonds, about their value, about the planned donation to the museum. And you conceived a scheme. Steal the diamonds, substitute paste, and frame Marcus Ashworth for the theft. But Ashworth was murdered, I said. If Theodore meant to frame him, Ashworth discovered the substitution. Poirot's gaze remained fixed on Theodore. He was a jeweller, after all. He had handled the Donarelli set for years. When Lady Vanderton asked him to verify the display arrangements, he noticed something amiss. The settings had been altered. The stones were wrong. He realized someone had switched the diamonds, and he began to investigate. Helena drew a sharp breath. That's why Marcus wanted to meet me in the conservatory. He said he had something to tell me, something that would change everything. He intended to warn you, mademoiselle. He had discovered that your cousin was the thief, and he knew that you, as the person who had arranged Theodore's employment, would be implicated if the truth emerged. He wished to settle matters finally, to reveal Theodore's guilt and clear your name before the gala proceeded. But Theodore found out, I said. Theodore overheard the arrangement. He was serving champagne, remember? Present everywhere, noticed by no one. He heard Ashworth make the appointment with Helena, and he realized his scheme was about to collapse. Poirot turned back to Theodore, whose face had crumpled into something desperate and feral. You went to the conservatory before Helena arrived. You confronted Ashworth, perhaps pleaded with him to stay silent, perhaps threatened him. There was an argument. Helena heard it from outside. You attempted to strangle him, but he was stronger than you expected. He fought back, so you changed tactics. The champagne, I breathed, the champagne. Poirot nodded. You had prepared for this contingency. You carried poison with you, prussic acid, easily obtained by one who knew where to look. When strangulation failed, you offered Ashworth a drink. A gesture of reconciliation, perhaps. A toast to silence. He accepted and died within minutes. Theodore's composure shattered completely. He rose from his seat, hands outstretched, voice rising to a wail. He deserved it! He ruined her, ruined Helena, married her in secret and then abandoned her for that woman. He pointed at Lady Vanderton, who recoiled. For years, Helena suffered in silence. For years, she watched him parade around with his wealthy patroness, while she managed the household like a servant. And when I finally had a chance to make it right, to take what we deserved, he tried to stop me. Theodore, no, Helena's voice broke. I never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. Theodore's eyes blazed with terrible devotion. I saw how you looked at him. I saw your pain. I would have done anything for you, Helena, anything. And now, his voice cracked. Now we could have been free. Rich, together, away from all of this, if only he had kept his mouth shut. The confession hung in the air, damning and complete. Inspector Graves stepped forward. Theodore Crane, I am arresting you for the murder of Marcus Ashworth and the theft of the Donarelli diamonds. You are not obliged to say anything, but anything you do say. Theodore lunged, not for the door, but for Helena. Whether he meant to embrace her or harm her, I never discovered. The constable intercepted him, and in moments he was restrained, handcuffed, still crying out Helena's name as they dragged him from the room. Helena sat frozen, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. In the aftermath, a strange stillness settled over Vanderton House. The police departed with their prisoner, the guests dispersed, and Poirot and I found ourselves alone with Lady Vanderton in the morning room, watching the first light of another dawn creep across the garden. "The diamonds," Lady Vanderton said quietly. "Will they be recovered?" "Inspector Graves has already sent men to the pawnbroker." Poirot sipped his coffee. Real coffee, finally, after a night of inferior substitutes. "The Donarelli heart will be returned to you. Theodore had not yet found a buyer for the remaining stones. They were hidden in his room at a lodging house in Cheapside. Your collection will be complete once more." "And Helena?" Lady Vanderton's voice softened. "She truly knew nothing of her cousin's scheme? Nothing. She was as much a victim as Marcus Ashworth, perhaps more so. Her cousin used her position, her access, her very presence in this household to execute his crime. And when it was done, he intended to let her hang for murder." Poirot set down his cup. "Theodore Crane is not mad, madame. He is something worse. He is a man who convinced himself that love justified any atrocity." I thought of the young footman's face as they led him away. The terrible twisted devotion that had driven him to theft, forgery, and murder. "What will happen to him?" I asked. "The rope, I expect." Poirot's voice held no satisfaction. "The English courts do not look kindly on poisoners, and his confession was heard by a room full of witnesses." Lady Vanderton closed her eyes. "I invited him into my home. I trusted Helena's judgment. If I had been more careful, you could not have known, madame." Poirot rose, retrieving his hat and gloves. "Evil does not announce itself. It wears the face of the devoted cousin, the loyal servant, the loving friend. It moves among us, unseen until the moment it strikes. That is what makes it so dangerous and so tragic." He paused at the door, turning back with an expression I rarely saw on his face, something almost like sorrow. "There is one more thing, madame. Miss Helena Crane. She will need a friend in the days to come. Her husband is dead, her cousin condemned, her name tainted by association. She has no one." Lady Vanderton was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "She has me," she said quietly. "Whatever Marcus was to both of us, she was wronged as much as I was. Perhaps more." She straightened, and some of her earlier composure returned. "I will not abandon her, Monsieur Poirot. You have my word." We left Vanderton House as the city stirred to life around us, carts rattling through Mayfair, servants scrubbing doorsteps, the eternal business of London resuming its course. Poirot walked in silence, his expression thoughtful. "It is a melancholy resolution, Hastings," he said at last. "Justice is served, yes. The killer will hang, the diamonds will be restored, the truth is known, and yet, I cannot help but think of Helena Crane. A woman who loved unwisely, suffered greatly, and now must rebuild her life from ashes." He shook his head. "The heart, Hastings. It is always the heart that betrays us. We give it to those who do not deserve it. We trust those who would destroy us. And when the betrayal comes, we are never prepared." I had no answer to that. We walked on in silence. At the corner, Poirot paused and looked back at Vanderton House, its white facade glowing in the morning light. "There is no greater crime," he murmured, "than to kill for love. For love should elevate us, Hastings. It should make us better than we are. When it becomes the justification for evil—" He sighed. "Then the evil is doubled. The love itself is poisoned." He turned away, adjusting his hat with characteristic precision. "Come, mon ami. Breakfast awaits. And the little grey cells, they require sustenance after such exertions." I followed him into the brightening day, leaving behind the house of diamonds and deceit, and the shattered lives within. And so concludes our tale of diamonds and deceit, of love twisted into obsession, and of justice served in the cold light of dawn. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the shadows. Until next time, this is Midnight Mysteries reminding you, the glitter of diamonds may dazzle the eye, but truth, like the finest stone, endures forever. Good night, dear listeners, and pleasant dreams.